Hey, guys. Welcome to the Tesla shareholder meeting. And I just want to start off by saying, hot damn, I love you guys. Yeah. We have the most awesome shareholder base. I mean, it's just incredible. Any public company, it's incredible. Wow.
Well, Elon Musk is now the richest person on the planet.
More than half the satellites in space are owned and controlled by one man.
Starting his own artificial intelligence company.
Well, he's a legitimate super genius. I mean, legitimate.
He says he's always voted for Democrats, but this year it will be different. He'll vote Republican.
There is a reason the U.S. government is so reliant on him.
Elon Musk is a scam artist, and he's done nothing.
Anything he does is fascinating to people.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, June 18th. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos. This week, we've got money on our minds, specifically Elon's victory. His pay package of some $50 billion was approved by Tesla shareholders last week. We'll dig into what that does and doesn't mean for his fortunes and for the company. Plus, imagine if X became the new Venmo. Friend of the show, Kurt Wagner, has a scoop on Elon's plans to morph X into a payments platform and some early steps the company has taken. And we'll also dig into another X development, the disappearance of users' liked posts on the platform and what's behind it. To talk about all things Tesla, we have our expert Muskologists, Max Chafkin, Business Week senior reporter. Hello, Max.
Hot damn, I love you guys.
You know, you beat me to that. So I was going to say that here at the end. I should have said it at the beginning. You said, hot damn, you love us all, and we all love you back. Dana Hull, our Elon Musk correspondent. Hello, Dana.
Awesome to be here.
And we have Jef Feeley, who covers Delaware courts for us here at Bloomberg. Hello, Jeff.
Good morning.
Later on in the show, to talk X, we'll have Kurt on, and we're going to have a special guest, Max Reed, who writes the Reed Max newsletter and has covered tech for many years. Okay, Dana, so the shareholder vote, or votes, there were actually multiple votes, but the biggest one on Elon's pay package took place last week. He won. What was the margin of the vote? Was it similar to his victory way back when this thing was approved in 2018, bigger, smaller? What did it look like?
It was roughly the same. 72% of voting shareholders voted to re-ratify Musk's 2018 pay package. And what was super interesting was that going into the shareholder meeting, like the day before, I thought the vote was very close. I mean, Tesla had been running this very aggressive campaign to engage retail shareholders. All of these people like Tesla Boomer Mama and others were like urging everyone to vote. There was this huge get out the vote effort. Optimus was urging people to vote. And the sense was that they didn't have the institutional shareholders. But then on Wednesday, Elon Musk, who has a penchant for front running, basically ran the big reveal. He posted on Twitter that that he was winning by a wide margin. And we came to learn after the fact that Vanguard, the largest shareholder in the company after Elon himself, voted yes for the pay package. And that was a bit of a surprise because they were a no in 2018.
So, Max, I guess I wonder if at some level it shows that his Get Out the Vote campaign was effective.
Yeah, as Dana says, and this is for a company that is, sort of famously against spending money on marketing and PR and on these kinds of things. They went all out on this effort. So, in other words, spending, it seemed, more energy and even maybe more thought and time and so on into marketing Elon Musk as a guy worthy of getting paid, tens of billions of dollars.
He really wanted that money, I guess. That included, of course, the slightly strong-arm tactics of calling up Tesla employees who own the stock and urging them to vote. He was pretty pumped up about winning this vote. You guys heard at the outset his greeting the assembly meeting there. We have another clip of him here talking about where he sees the company and its valuation going.
I think just based on vehicle autonomy, we can 10x, more than 10x the value of the company. I believe that's what will happen. Yeah, no, it's just, what do you know? It's 4:20 p.m. Just noticed that.
I assume those pauses there are for the bong hits.
I feel like I getting a contact high, listening to him.
A little bit as well.
We talk a lot about on this podcast about how, there's sort of what Elon says and then how he says it. And he's saying pretty much the same things he's been saying for a long time, although the mood was, even loopier, even more sort of ebullient. Did I say that right? Than usual. And full on loopy. And investors historically have kind of responded to that. If Elon Musk seems like he's in a good mood, even if he's making weed jokes and awkwardly pausing and using a weird voice to say, hot damn, I love you guys, investors are sort of okay with it.
Yeah, Dana, to that point, the stock actually did pop both that day and the next day. So even though it was sort of expected, I guess it was a bit of a reassurance for those.
Tesla has always struggled with key man risk. And the key man risk in this case was that if the pay package didn't pass, that Elon was going to get pissed off and quit and walk away and take his AI and robotics toys elsewhere. So it was reassuring to investors to sort of see him in this happy, expansive, dopamine-fueled kind of mood, talking about not just the next chapter of Tesla's history, but he claimed that they are writing a new book. And then he threw out all kinds of crazy numbers about how the valuation is just going to skyrocket. I mean, they're going to 10x, they're going to see 200 to 300% year over year growth in the energy storage. They've got the Cybertrucks. They're going to optimize Optimus. And then he thinks that it's possible for Tesla to achieve a valuation 10 times that of the most valuable company today, which would be a valuation of 33 trillion. So, we talk about Elon's moods. He was expansive, Elon. And, these shareholder meetings are like religious revival events. I mean, people are so grateful to have a ticket to be able to say that they were in the room with this guy. But this doesn't mean that it's over. Yes, the shareholders voted to re-ratify the package, but the judge in Delaware still has to sort of sign off on that, and that is far from certain.
Yeah, so Jef, give us the next legal steps here.
Okay, so these guys have tried to do basically a redo over the original package to fix the flaws that Judge McCormick pointed out in January. Nobody's ever tried to do this before. The section of the law they're using, lots of people say, was set up for technical fixes, not substantive changes like this. So Judge Katie, that's her local nickname, is not required to take notice at all of the shareholder vote. She has to issue a final ruling in the case, and that includes deciding how much the winning shareholders' lawyers get in legal fees. There's a hearing July 8th to hear arguments on the legal fees, and I guess on Tesla's argument that they can, now they should be able to just reinstate his package because they've fixed all the, they've plugged all the holes. The general belief in the bar around here is that this is not going to affect her ruling. She's ruled on the package. She's found the flaws. They really didn't address the flaws. They made some weak attempts at trying to remove the conflicts, but having one person serve as the special committee is not what you would call best practices in good governance world. Okay. And that's the thing.
But Jef, one of her concerns, if I'm remembering correctly, was that they kind of smooth played this one over on the shareholders and who weren't quite aware of what they were actually voting for when they voted for his pay package. And certainly, I would think no one can make that argument now. I think everyone was eminently aware of what they were voting for.
Yes, although they being Tesla, were not very transparent about the idea that this didn't have any binding effect on the judge. Okay? They led folks to believe that if you vote yes, that Elon's going to get his dough. And that ain't so.
Okay, right. True. So they voted yes. He doesn't get his dough yet. They're waiting for the judge now to respond. Now, Dana, what happens if the judge says no yet again? Is there any pay package in effect at all for him, or is he essentially going unpaid? And the horror of it, a guy with whatever, $150 billion or so going unpaid. But what is the current pay package in place?
So there's a couple avenues. I mean, Tesla will undoubtedly appeal. If the judge says, no, screw you, I'm not taking this like redo vote into account, my opinion from January still stands.
She's definitely saying screw you if she votes no. Yeah.
Tesla can appeal to the Delaware Supreme Court. So keep your eye out for a filing on that after they have this hearing in July. But now Tesla has moved its legal incorporation to Texas. I mean, that's the other significant vote that happened at the shareholder meeting. They are now domiciled in Texas. It's where their headquarters has been for a couple of years now. But now they have another avenue because they could, I mean, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they could do yet another revote in Texas, and then only Texas law would apply.
Correct.
So that's sort of the end game here. I mean, they're doing an end run around the Delaware court system.
This is going to go on, though, because you have, first of all, I'm pretty sure that Texas has to respect Judge McCormick's ruling, or it should respect Judge McCormick's ruling. So they have to do a new pay package. Meanwhile, you've got all of these lawsuits that were filed, just under the wire to all these shareholders who want to have cases in Delaware courts. So this Delaware is going to have something to say about Elon Musk for some time.
Yeah, well, first of all, let's remember that Texas's business courts aren't even set up yet. They will not be set up until September.
What does that mean? Texas has no business courts at all
They
right
have
now?
They have no court equivalent to Delaware's Chancery Court, which is the premier venue for corporate litigation in the country. They are trying to set up a competing court to the Delaware court, and their legislature enabled it in the last session, but they have not been able to hire judges. They don't have stuff codified. We're a fair distance away from anybody being able to navigate a lawsuit in those particular courts.
I see.
So that's number one. Number two, we live in a rule of law the last time I checked here in this country.
Me too.
And being a disappointed litigant and being unhappy about a court system is one thing. But, switching your state of incorporation because a judge ruled against you on one thing is so Elon, it's almost hilarious.
Dana, before we move on, though, let me ask you this last question. Out of the shareholder vote or the shareholder meeting, were there any other votes of import that our listeners should know about?
Yeah, so two directors were up for re-election, James Murdoch and Kimball Musk. They've both been on the board for a while. Kimball is obviously Elon's younger brother. Both of them were re-elected to the board with like pretty flying colors, so no surprises there. And I think it was just like a chance for Elon to take this big victory lap and for the retail shareholders who really came all out and got engaged in and active in a way that frankly, retail shareholders typically do not vote in proxy fights. I mean, every once in a while you might have like a big proxy battle where there's like an activist shareholder trying to take over a stake in the company. But in general, like people own shares via their like mutual funds or in their retirement accounts, and they're not like active participant in, I guess, what you could call shareholder democracy. But this was a real, this was a real sense that they were. And so going forward, I'm curious to see how active these shareholders will be, and if there will ever come a time where they're actually like opposed to what the company is saying.
Hey, Jef Feeley, before we let you go, sir, any final words of wisdom?
Well, I would not go to Vegas and put money down on Judge Katie allowing them to do a redo.
I'm writing this down. I'm writing.
Well,
I do gamble a fair amount, so hold on. Do not go to Vegas and bet again.
I mean, I'd put some money on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl,
man.
but not Elon.
Don't. I can talk about the Mets on this show and mock Max about the Mets. We don't talk about the Philadelphia Eagles on the show. Jef Feeley, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay. All right, guys. See ya.
Take care. Dana, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Now, Max Shefkin and I are joined by Kurt Wagner, who covers tech for us here at Bloomberg. Hello, Kurt.
Hey.
And Max Reed, the author of the Read Max Substack newsletter. Welcome, Max.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so for the purposes of this, so we don't get confused here, we're going to go with Max Reed and Chafkin. Does that work? And by the way, Max is a fantastic name. I mean, if we had another child and was a boy, we were going to name him Max, just Maximilian Papadopoulos. The kid would have achieved incredible things. Kurt Wagner, let's start with you and your scoop this morning that you had out with your colleague Aisha Counts. Elon and co there at X are advancing on their plans for their Venmo-like payments feature. We've known about this for a while, but you've encountered a bunch of new information. Tell us what you learned.
Yeah, we submitted public records requests in all 50 states because what X is doing right now is they're trying to get payments licenses in these states. And so we just, sent the regulatory agencies our FOIAs, and in 11 cases, actually, we got documents back, and it gave us a nice glimpse into what it is they're doing. So we got some business plans, financial statements, org charts, things like that were helpful, not just to paint a picture of what they're doing on payments, but also just give us a bit of a sneak peek into X more broadly, because it is a private company now, and we don't really get those updates like we used to when Twitter was public. But the short version is they are trying to build a payments-like feature where you would, log into a dashboard on x.com or the app. You could pay people, you could pay businesses, you could store money. The fees would be very minimal, so it wouldn't be passed on. The business aspect of this wouldn't be passed on to consumers. And as you mentioned, David, like this plays into this everything app idea that Elon has talked about. You can't be an everything app if you can't use it for finances and money. And so they are very much in the process of trying to make this a reality. And even though Elon sort of hinted at it and talked about it, I think these documents confirmed a lot of the progress and ambitions that they have.
Now, Max Reed, the Everything app, and in particular leaning into the financial parts of it, something that Elon has really kind of obsessed about for a long, long time, dating, way back to prior to his acquisition of Twitter, right?
Yeah, 25 years after he sold his first company, Zip2, in the 90s, he wanted to launch an online bank, which he purchased the URL x.com for. His URL in particular, maybe even more than the business plan, has been a real white whale for him. But this is a sort of famous story. He launched X around the same time that Peter Thiel and company launched what was going to become PayPal, Confinity. They were in this really cutthroat competition and eventually merged, and Thiel famously pushed Musk out. PayPal became, the leader at the time of payment apps. And Musk, depending on how you look at it, Musk has perhaps been stewing for decades, hoping to get back into the world of online payments. He bought back the x.com URL from PayPal 2017, I think. And, this was one of the first things he was talking about when he was buying X. I think even before he bought X, he was talking up WeChat, the Chinese chat app.
An app that's as good as WeChat in China. And in China, you can live on WeChat, basically. It's everyone's like, you live on WeChat, you do payments, you do everything. It's it's great. Basically, WeChat's kick ass. And we don't have anything like WeChat outside of China. So I was like, my idea would be how about if we just copy WeChat? Hey.
Honestly, the ascent is more interesting in that clip than the substance. One thing that Max left out of that story is that, and I learned this when I was reporting my book about Thiel, some people think that the final straw for Elon Musk getting pushed out was an attempt to rename. Among the things he did, and PayPal was kind of a mess back then, right before he got pushed out, was to try to rename PayPal, which at that point had a brand and a decent following and so on. He tried to rename it X. So kind of exactly the same move we saw with Twitter when he did the renaming there. He just loves that letter.
So, Kurt, best case scenario for Elon and the X crew, when is this feature being rolled out? What's their timeline like? I know that Elon's always wildly optimistic on his timelines, but what are they talking about?
Yeah, they wanted it or want it by the end of this year. They had said in some of the emails we read that they were hoping to do so once they had the majority of state, they had payments licenses in the majority of states. They now have 28. So technically they do have more than half. My guess is they would want more than, much closer to 50 so that people are able to actually send money.
But Kurt, do they absolutely need all 50 to start, or could you start with 42?
You could start with 42, but then, there are people in 8 states who can't participate, and it kind of
think of what they're
limit
going to be losing out on. Jesus.
Well, yeah, but imagine you have a friend there you want to send money to and you can't. It sort of limits the user experience, and I think that's really the key, right? Like building this, getting the approval is sort of the easy part, in my opinion. I actually think the hard part here is going to be convincing people to use X in a way that they have never used it before, right? Not only are there a bunch of existing competitors like Venmo out there that have market share, but it's a user behavior issue. Like how many people are going to suddenly say, yes, this app that I've used to, dunk on politicians or get my news for the past 20 years is suddenly going to be my bank. Like that's just not a logical jump for most people. And I think that's going to be the bigger hurdle than actually building the product.
Quick straw poll here. I want to ask the two Maxes and Kurt if you indeed would, try this out. Assuming, by the way, I'm going to throw in $100 for X. I'm going to give you all a free $100 because I'm sure they're going to do something like that. They're going to slip you a C note or something. They slip you a C note and say, hey, we want you to stop using Venmo, use X. Max Chafkin.
Well, I'm going to look at what the interest rates are, like really very closely study the offering. No, I'm not going to use the app that I doom scroll to do banking. No.
Max sees a no. Max Reed.
Take the $100 and I'd make the minimum number of payments to get the $100 out, and then I would never use it again.
That's a good answer. Kurt?
Yeah, I do the same. I mean, I'm not even comfortable really using Twitter DMs right now for privacy reasons, so I'm not going to be using Twitter for my banking.
Reading Kurt's story, it was like reading... I feel like it was a really good illustration of how easy it is when you're very wealthy to like spend money on dumb things. Because clearly Elon Musk told a bunch of people, and I think there's some reporting to this effect as well, like said, essentially ordered his team to secure these permits. They're doing so at probably absurd expense.
Wait. Why is that? Why is securing permits incredibly expensive?
You have a bunch of, high-priced lawyers and, it's just taking years. And like at the end of the day, even if they get all these permits, like Kurt says, this is not going to be a big business.
Right. Let's even pretend, Kurt, that it is a big business. For the sake of argument, let's say this thing takes off and holy smokes, everyone stops using Zelle, stops using Venmo. They are exing money across the globe. As they see it, does it generate a lot of revenue for them as they've laid out their model in the documents you've looked at?
They haven't put revenue projections into the documents we've seen. They have said that the fees are not really the main purpose here. Again, they wouldn't do fees for consumers. They would do a fee for a business. So if I buy something from you, David, you as the retailer might have to, pay 1%, 2%, 3% or whatever to X because the sale came through their platform. For them, what they've said is the bigger business is this idea that people will find X more valuable, therefore they will spend more time on X, and that will make X a better advertising business, which is what they already do. So
the idea is that you buy your Cheech and Chong gummies with this payment platform, right? And that will cause Cheech and Chong to pay more money to X to advertise.
Well, let's go back to our $100 example here. Max, you have your $100 sitting in your X account, and Cheech and Chong suddenly says, well, you're a more valuable target for them because you could make a purchase with one click right there in the feed, right? You can make an impulse buy. Oh, this looks cool. And I already have the money sitting in my account. Boom, buy right there, right? It just eliminates these steps that get to a sale. And their hope is that will make X a more valuable advertising business.
Okay. Now, Kurt, in doing the digging for this story, I believe you also uncovered some financials in the filings, right? A bit of a better look inside how the company is doing. And what did you learn there?
No shock to folks on this pod because we've talked about this, but the business was not doing well last year. The numbers we got were from Q1 and Q2 of 2023, so about a year ago, basically the first, full 6 months of Elon in charge. And X's revenue was about 40% lower than the year prior when he took over. They lost almost $500 million in the first quarter alone. And I think for me, not only did it confirm a lot of things that we'd been hearing and trying to report, right, sort of around the company, but I think that it just sort of explains why this everything app idea is so important to Elon, because the current business plan that they have is just not working. It's not big enough. And so if you are sitting there saying, hey, we have a business that's half the size of what I acquired. You got to fill that in somehow. And so I think that's why this everything app and these payments are such a priority for them, is because they're sitting there going, we need to figure out how to make money from this thing.
But I guess, Max Reed, my question for you would be, this isn't some little startup company now. I mean, X, formerly Twitter, has been around for a while. You are now losing $500 million a quarter. At what point do you just say, all right, we're just throwing good money after bad here? This ain't working.
Are you asking me, or are you asking hypothetical Elon Musk? Because I'm not sure Elon Musk ever quite hits that point. I mean, for me, I would have said that 19 months ago, but I also wouldn't have bought X, Twitter, whatever. I mean, this is the funny thing about the Everything app. And you could even hear it in that clip, which I believe was from before he even bought Twitter. It's the idea, I don't know, if you're thinking, we need to make this company really big, if you just say the words Everything app, that's the biggest thing there is. Everything is everything. Yeah. But it's not precisely a business plan, is it? WeChat is what it is because of a pretty specific situation about Chinese finance and banks and payments. And it evolved into that after a bunch of decisions made over the course of a couple decades. And it's really not the kind of thing that you can just walk in and say, if we crowbar payments into the as we say, the app where Cheech and Chong are selling me gummies and where cam girls have all kinds of things in their bios, it doesn't strike me as a natural fit. And I don't think it's the kind of thing that's suddenly going to leverage you into a Facebook-sized company.
We know that this Everything app thing is like Max is saying, like an uphill battle, because every other tech company in the US has tried it. Yeah. Facebook has tried it. They all, Google this is not like this is like the most obvious thing you could possibly think if you owned a social media app. It's not some kind of,
this was real great epiphany.
Right. And they've all tried it, and they've all basically failed for the reasons that Max is saying. Like, the internet it's a thing, it's like a living thing that's evolved. You can't just sort of like snap your fingers and swallow, a whole section of the internet where people have sort of locked in relationships with companies. But, one thing I've noticed as we've had this conversation, I mean, this thing with the Everything app, just take it seriously for a second. It's kind of similar to Optimus, right? It's just like Elon Musk picking the biggest possible thing. So, like, what if I owned the means of production for everything in the entire world? Like, he's basically said that. What if I own the entire internet? That would be great. And, this is where he's honestly very good. I mean, as outlandish as those ideas are, and as outlandish it is for Elon to sit up at the Tesla annual meeting when Tesla is, worth $500 billion and is like, way overvalued relative to every other car company, to say, oh, we're going to be worth, 30 trillion. And right, people kind of take that, seriously.
But on that, going back to that shareholder meeting, because actually that's where my mind was going a little bit, Kurt. I know you were listening in early and you heard the clips, the raucous clips of the crowd egging him on and cheering him. You can't tell me that you can't take some of those enthusiastic Tesla shareholders and Tesla owners and get them on this Everything app. Come on.
You can. There were 300 people in that room? Sure. There's your 300 users, right? I feel like
there were at least 500. Come on.
At least 500. I mean, this is sort of the subscription product that X launched on, right after, right? Like, you look at who kind of is subscribed to that. And I think for the most part, it's people who believe in Elon and people who are Elon fans. And that is a small business for them. That is not a big enough business for this to work. So there's always going to be people, no matter what he does. He sold flamethrowers, for God's sake, right? And like, people bought those. So like, no matter what he does, there will be an audience for it. But I think the question is it at scale? And I don't think, I think this will be tough to get to scale.
I got you, Kurt. The Everything app is going to be as important to X as the flamethrower was to Tesla. So some iteration of 0.00001% of revenue. Max Reed, in other X news, the company has begun to hide, to a certain degree, your likes on posts. Tell us a little bit more about it and how we should interpret this.
Yeah, so last week, some people poking around on Twitter realized that they were piloting a program where likes would be hidden. So classically, there are 3 actions you can do with a tweet. You can retweet or quote tweet it, you can reply to it, or you can like it, which has an ambiguous meaning, let's say, but it's saved in a big list that is or was until recently publicly accessible on your profile. So if you're out there liking Cheech and Chong tweets, then anybody who goes to your profile can see all the Cheech and Chong tweets you liked. And similarly, I could click on a Cheech and Chong tweet and see everybody who liked that tweet. And when it was discovered that they were sort of figuring out how to hide these, or they were playing around with hiding them, Twitter's head of engineering tweeted that they were doing this because they felt like people were afraid of liking, I believe the phrase he used was edgy content, that trolls would attack people who liked edgy content, that it would be used to damage them in some way.
You're not buying it, I take it.
I mean, I think I buy that is the literal reason that many of the people who work at Twitter right now want to do this. It's hard for me not to associate a particular kind of political valence to that statement, by which I mean, I think there are people maybe who work at Twitter, but a lot of people who use Twitter who are under the impression that there's all these kind of right-wing statements that are getting made that people would like if they knew it would be hidden, but they can't like them because that edgy content is going to get them attacked by trolls. Practically speaking, I think maybe what they're talking about is a kind of dynamic where prominent people, politicians, hedge fund managers, celebrities are are engaged in a kind of constant back and forth, let's say, with the non-prominent, non-famous people on Twitter. And if you like something in errancy, I mean, I'm thinking, for example, of when Ted Cruz's account.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this
accidentally liked a still from a porno. This was back in 2018 or whatever it was.
All-time greatest moment in Twitter history, I think.
Yeah. I mean, look, from a pure traffic perspective, it's obviously hugely profitable to Twitter to allow likes to be open because stuff like that is just going to generate all kinds of attention and traffic. But if part of what you want to do is protect your most prominent users, you might want to reduce the what you would call their attack surface. Like you want to reduce the number of ways that people can, as Kurt was saying before, dunk on politicians, dunk on prominent people. And to me, that's the sort of the kind of consistent thread through a lot of the product changes that Elon has brought through X.
Chafkin, beyond the great Ted Cruz example, any other big ones come to mind over the years of celebs being or Kurt?
I mean, Max is saying, first of all, Max, he wrote about this in his newsletter, which was great and really well argued. And I think he's totally right. It's mostly about politics and this perception of essentially right-wing content. But I will say, I think a lot of this comes up with porn, and it's a lot of people, liking content that's edgy in a sort of sexual way, because often I think because they don't quite realize that the likes are public. Like there's like in certain cases, I think a genuine.
Oh, wait a minute. You mean they are?
But, I also think, just to play devil's advocate, I went back and looked at my likes from the last.
Do you like your likes now?
No, I hate them. And it just made me think, like, mostly the way I was using this was kind of just to express what amounts to like a private thank you or something for somebody. It's like really embarrassing. All my likes are like self-praise. It's like they're really lame. Jesus, and it just made me feel, it really, like, going back, it just made me feel really bad about myself. Like, I probably only for every 20 likes, only one was 1 out of 20 was like a good joke, which I think is the way you're supposed to use it.
Kurt, Max is feeling a little bad about himself. Do you have anything encouraging or positive to say to him? Can you like him right now in some fashion?
Yeah, I like Max. I wouldn't obviously display that publicly on my Twitter account, but like I'll say it here to you guys. Yeah.
I want to ask Max Reed, though, another question on this, the question of whether a legitimate argument can be made for it or not. I know, you feel at some level that this is also just potentially cover for people liking outright racist sort of tweets or X's and that sort of thing. But is it possible that something like, hey, I want to be supportive of the kind of anti-woke types who are, against some sort of corporate diversity initiative, but God, I can't quite get myself to do that publicly. Is that not potentially a thing?
Yeah, totally. And I think, we probably don't have to go all the way into racism or hard right, whatever, to sort of acknowledge that there's Twitter is a complicated social space, and there's all kinds of trouble you can get in to varying degrees of real life trouble versus just sort of having your Twitter experience be ruined. And I can recognize the value, the user experience value, to sort of feeling a little bit more free to lend your support to tweets. Though, it's the kind of thing when you say that out loud, it feels a little bit ridiculous that this is a user priority, is that you want to make sure they're able to click the heart button as many times as possible, under anti-woke posts. But I think the thing that this cuts against, just to defend public likes, is I think that, Twitter is not a particularly transparent social network. Social networks in general are not particularly open or transparent. But I think that kind of transparency is really valuable, even to the limited extent that it exists in this specific case. Not just for, say, journalists like me who are, naturally just looking for ways to take down prominent politicians for liking, big butts posts or whatever it is that they're liking, but in a sort of broader sense, to have a sense of who on Twitter is looking at what and how they're looking at it.
Well, yeah, what was cool about the likes is there's a cost to liking something, which is that you have to, there's a cost to retweeting, which is that, I'm going to blast my followers with this. That would be the maximal way to show approval or whatever. And a like, although it's not, you're not spamming your feed, it's still there. And now in a situation where you can just, like willy-nilly and you're never going to have to defend your likes, then you're going to get like inflation. I feel like, and it's,
just one more kind of inflation that we have to deal with. Now, Max Reed and Kurt, you heard that Max Chafkin is essentially embarrassed by almost all the likes he's ever put up there over the past.
I only went back to 2000, early 21.
So maybe you feel like pre-21.
Maybe if I'd scrolled further back, there were cool likes back there, but I don't know. Just not enough funny jokes and just too much, professional. Boring.
Thanks for the support. Give us, for each of you, the most embarrassing like in hindsight that you've encountered. Max Reed.
I don't want to ruin the game, but I have to say, I don't think anybody should be embarrassed by their likes. I'm here to preach a gospel of non-shame and unembarrassedness about what you're doing online. I think if you're liking stuff that people praising you, if your mom is on Twitter sharing your articles, you should be liking that, frankly. It speaks poorly of you that you're not liking those things.
It speaks poorly of you, Max.
You better be. You better be liking those. So that's
okay.
all I'm going to say.
This is good. No, this is good. So Max Chafkin is embarrassed by everything he's ever liked. Max Reed is embarrassed by nothing that he's ever liked, or at least nothing that he'll admit to here in front of all of us. Kurt Wagner, what is your answer, sir?
I didn't go back as far as Max did. That's dedication to go all the way to 2021 or whatever it is. I noticed two themes. The first is, unfortunately, just like our friend Max Chafkin, I really, basically, you even look my direction and boom, I'm liking that thing. If you comment about my book, even if it's not a nice comment, boom, you get a like.
Terrific.
So I'm definitely, doing a lot of that. Yeah. And then I also have a ton of likes from around the time when Elon took over Twitter, because I was using the like at that point sort of as like a bookmark, right? I want to come back to this tweet. So I got a ton of Elon tweets. I got the sleeping bag tweet from that executive who slept in the office, a bunch of Jack Dorsey's.
That was a good post, though.
Yeah, it was good. No, it was good. I mean, I'm actually with Max Reed here. I wasn't embarrassed by my likes necessarily. I just noticed that they fell into a couple buckets. It was I want to remember this for later for work, or you looked my way and boom, thanks for the attention. You get a like.
Yeah, that's a bit
much. Those were the buckets.
That's a bit much. So going forward, are you going to stop doing that?
No, not at all. Why would I? Now you can't even see. Now you can't even see how much I'm liking my own.
It's private. Doesn't matter. We can just like everything.
Exactly.
Okay.
No.
Very good. Max Reed, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Kurt, as always, thank you.
As always, I had a great time. Thank you.
Max Chafkin.
Ditto.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong. Naomi Shavin and Rehan Harmansi are our senior editors. The idea for this very show also came from Rehan. Blake Maples handles engineering, and we get special editing assistance from Jeff Grocott, Antonia Mufarech, and Arafat Jalasho Perry. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Brendan Francis Newnham is our executive producer, and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. A big thank you to our supporter, Joel Weber. I'm David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next week.